Good morning.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
I can. You?
Oh,
Me?
yeah, very good. Hey, cheers to the coffee this morning.
Oh, yes. I appreciate you doing an early recording. It benefits myself, my family, to not in a bad way, but in a good way, just to knock this out first thing so I can carry on with my family activities. So thank you.
Any plans today?
Nothing major. Nothing major. Just clean up, take care of the family, maybe relax for a little bit before I go back out in the field for a week with the recruits again. Another busy week ahead of me.
Fair enough. Well, everybody's got to work, right?
I think that's the idea behind this great country of Canada and the U.S. I think we're supposed to work for our money. I read that somewhere, but I could be wrong.
We could be completely off base about this. Perhaps we should just blow the whole thing up and start over, right?
Well, some people want to.
Happy Sunday morning.
Yeah, to you as well. Anything you want to say before we start?
No, I just want to reiterate how much I liked the last episode and how well that turned out. Appreciate you keep asking me back on.
Hey, it was fun. Yeah, if you're listening to this episode right now and you haven't heard that episode where Drew and I talk about higher beings, it was actually the episode before this one. So go check it out in the feed, and it might blow your mind or your soul, whatever you have there.
We still haven't figured that out, have we?
That's the whole problem. We don't know. We have no idea what's going on.
We don't.
All right. Well, here we go.
Welcome to the worst of the best podcast. You wanted the best. Well, they didn't freaking make it. So here's what you get. From Canada
And Florida.
Ryan and
Drew. Welcome to the Worst of the Best podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and with me again today, multiple returning guest hosts, Drew. How you doing?
Doing very well, Ryan. Happy to get up early and do this one with you. Our recording schedule is a little off the wall sometimes. Good to talk about some of these topics. I don't remember how many of the musical themed episodes that I've been on. A lot of times we discuss these varying range of top 10 lists and sometimes adventures into the scientific, the philosophical, the hilarious. But here we are talking about music. I think that's how we originally met. We talked about Third Eye Blind, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly right. If you're a Third Eye Blind fan or you're a Drew fan and you haven't heard Drew break down Third Eye Blind, we did a two-parter on that band and one of our more successful episodes. Very strong fan base. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That's how we met. We met on the Third Eye Blind, I guess, Facebook page, fan group.
Reddit, I believe. I think you were sort of crowdsourcing for several people, and I was one of them. That was a heck of a good time. We got to get that band back together again sometime, Ryan.
Yeah, for sure. There was great bunch of characters that did. Yeah, there was a few great characters on that episode. It was funny. We all of us didn't know each other, and we all did a pretty fair job of running a podcast together without everyone knowing everybody. But today, this was again your pick. This is the first music episode you've been on since that Third Eye Blind episode. I asked you in a chat, like, hey, let's do another music one together. Is there a band that you enjoy that I might enjoy too? Because we have varying tastes, of course. And you mentioned in your plethora of bands that you picked, you mentioned Stone Temple Pilots. And I'm like, hey, that's easy. I've been a fan since their debut album. And indeed, that is the discussion we're going to have today, is their debut album, Core. But what I wanted to say before we get into that is, those who are listening because they're Stone Temple Pilot fans, welcome to the show. This will be a part 1 of 2. And the next time we just talk about Stone Temple Pilots, we're also going to cover their sophomore effort, Purple, and that will be on another episode. But today's episode will just be their Core album. And if you're coming onto this show because you are a Stone Temple Pilots fan and you haven't heard any of my other episodes on this feed, what we do is we take the best of something. Whatever the topic, whatever the subject, we take the best of it, and then we just actually pick the worst, because not everything is created equal. You can't like everything the same. That's an impossibility. Core is one of the best rock debut albums of all time, for best-selling, for influential, for especially for the 90s. It is an album that holds today. It's from one of the better grunge/rock bands that came out from the 90s, so that's where it falls into the best. Drew and I, independent of each other, will, at the end of talking about this album, will pick what we feel is the worst song from their debut album, Core. And the criteria is it cannot be a cover song from another band, and all members of the band have to participate in the song. So that's the gist of it. Drew, did I miss anything about what the show's about?
I was trying to figure out that very last thing that you said. Every member of the band has to be featured. I thought, and maybe this has been rephrased over time.
Probably.
I thought that there was actually a strict no instrumentals rule. Is that sort of what you're getting at when you say no instrumentals? That means it doesn't include one of the members of the band, and that's why. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, because it's an easy pick. The reason why I did that for albums, when we go through albums of other episodes, because it's kind of unfair to pick the singer's not singing. So it's easy to say, hey, that's my least liked song on the album because I don't hear the singer sing. Some people really like instrumentals, but an instrumental could be an easy pick to say that's the worst song on the album. And another one would be a cover song, because you say, oh, well, it's not even their song. They did a good job and all that, but it's not an original tune. That's basically it. Or there are some other albums where I've done where, maybe there was no guitar or it was just bass and drum or something. I kind of like the idea that it's a band effort. The whole album is a band effort, so I want everyone to participate in whatever track that might be. I think that's it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I appreciate you fleshing that out for us. That's good to know going forward. There are 12 tracks on this album. Did I get that right?
I hope so.
There have been several re-releases of this album. I think we're both going to be talking about and dealing with the Super Deluxe Edition. I think this is the one that was re-released for the 25th anniversary. Did I get that right?
If you're tracking, for those who are listening, of course, we always go by what was the track listing upon its initial release. So even though we're going to be playing clips from their Super Deluxe Edition that got remastered, so you'll be hearing remastered pieces from each song. We'll play each song a little bit from each parts that we'd like, but usually it's the intro, maybe a solo here or there. That's kind of what we do. We don't play the whole track, obviously, because if you want to hear the whole song, just go on iTunes or YouTube and listen to it. We recommend that you do if you've never heard this album before, or if it's it could be a first time listen. There are people who listen to the podcast, Drew, who don't know all the bands that we talk about, and they actually enjoy our breakdown of the songs. So anyways, it's 12 tracks upon its initial release. Yes, that's what we'll be covering. Why don't you first, Drew, talk about when you first, quote unquote, discovered or became a fan of Stone Temple Pilots?
I wanted to reflect back on what you were talking about in our online chat. I did give you a wide assortment of bands that we could talk about. I tried to spread them out over sort of when they got big and when their hits came out. I tried to give like a spread out timeline for you to choose from. Now, I think what you did was you chose the earliest band, which sort of reflects where our musical interests cross over. Stone Temple Pilots' first album was released on September 29th of 1992. I was a babe the age of 8. I think that you and I are going to have different ways of how we've initially explored this album and how we initially connected with it, what the limitations may have been, what were some of the factors that helped us to experience this album. Obviously, at the age of 8, I wasn't buying a lot of grunge rock albums with my meager savings at the time. My exposure to these songs came over the couple of years that followed as they were heavily rotated on MTV. The music videos were very, very prevalent and popular, as well as the local rock and roll stations in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. The hits off of this album, and as we'll get into, even some of the non-hits, the songs that weren't even released as singles, these got into the space that I was in almost involuntarily for several years there until I was able to, early teen years, really formulate what I wanted from music, what I liked about music, and what I was going to go out and seek for myself. These songs were a part of my musical lingo even prior to that. That I was very young when this album came out, and I've since experienced it in different ways as I've grown.
I'm a little bit older than you. You were 8 years old when this came. That's funny. I'm just trying to think. When I was 8 years old, it would have been 1983 that I turned 8. Some of the first albums that I was getting into in music was everything from Michael Jackson, Duran Duran, Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister. Those were the new albums, the new bands back when I was 8 years old. So when this rolled around, I was already a CD buying, tape cassette buying veteran. I was almost 17 years old when this album dropped. So I was quite heavily or knee deep in just loving music, loving rock. Grunge had just kind of exploded on the scene with Nirvana's Nevermind a short time before, Pearl Jam's 10. Enjoyed those albums. I actually had those albums, and I, even as a hair metal guy, because I was big into, I hate the term hair metal, but long-haired rock and roll or hard rock. So like, again, Motley Crue, Aerosmith, AC/DC, these were bands I just loved and still do. And as a teenager, I felt conflicted because I understood the grunge kind of represented like, oh no, we're not going to wear makeup or costumes, we're going to wear flannel shirts and we're going to be serious and solemn and I love Pearl Jam, but sometimes the pretentiousness kind of bugs me. I enjoy their music, and sometimes I just want to tell Eddie Vedder, like, calm down, you're not saving the world. At the end of the day, it's just music, and I enjoy a lot of their stuff, and I've seen them live, and I'm still a fan to this day, and I just never, to me, music doesn't always have to be serious. There can be serious songs and fun songs and serious messages and fun messages. And so when Stone Temple Pilots came on, they were kind of thrown into the grunge, but I think unfairly so. And I think once we go through this album track by track, there's a couple grungy or vocal sounds that sound similar to what the grunge, Soundgarden and Eddie Vedder at the time, and Lane Stanley from Alice in Chains. Definitely the comparison was there because I was in the ether of the time, but this is not a grunge album. This is a rock album.
I completely agree. My experience with Stone Temple Pilots initially was not really knowing which songs were Stone Temple Pilots songs and which songs were Soundgarden songs, Nirvana songs, Pearl Jam songs. They did get mixed in, and that's part of the way that I was experiencing them. I had to listen to the song on the radio and then wait for the DJ to tell me who that artist was.
Yeah, that's fair.
I had to sort of split these things apart. Probably for the first couple of years that I loved these songs as they would get played, it may not have been completely clear to me, who I was loving. I was a fan of these types of bands, the grunge bands that you mentioned. The rock station that I listened to would mix in this music along with some of the late 80s things that you were talking about, the Metallica, the hair bands. That was just all part of what I consider the rock and roll scene. It came until later that I, understood this band was from this sort of era and they are a hair metal band, as much as you might hate that. This band is from this era and they are a grunge band. And then bands that came a little bit later that I really came to love were the alt rock band, alternative rock, and that was the genre that they called that. Stone Temple Pilots sort of bridged the gap between the hair metal, the grunge, into the alt rock. Stone Temple Pilots had some longevity to them. These songs played on the radio for years and years, decades even after they were released. Stone Temple Pilots were actually still touring with some of the bands that got big in the late 90s, perhaps most notably the Limp Bizkits and the Korns. Did you like those bands that came along later that were somewhat inspired by STP?
I did listen to Limp Bizkit's, Limp Bizkit's first tour, where there were two big albums. What was it? The Nookie album.
$3 Bill, y'all.
Yeah. No, that was the name of the album was?
$3 Bill was the first album, the one that had the George Michael cover on it.
Oh, no, it was the one after that. The
Significant Other?
Yeah. I quite enjoyed those because Fred Durst, not to get on will join us for our next episode where we cover Fred Durst's two best albums. For a while there, I did have on heavy rotation those two albums, Chocolate Starfish and Significant Other. I thought they were quite fun and kind of, again, another redefining moment in music. And I like music, again, that's fun. And definitely Limp Bizkit had some fun, hard-hitting, fun songs. And back to Stone Temple Pilots, that's what I like about this album is it came out after 10, it came out after Nevermind. I was like, oh, wait, this is fun. This is kind of some fun and hard-driving rock music. Let's go into it right now because we'll talk about the different sounds. Because
sure.
I will admit, and you have song number one, I will admit that yes, with the opening track, Dead and Bloated, this is where people might be saying, oh, it sounds grungy. I agree. So the opening track does kind of introduce the album in a grungy type way.
It sure does. Thank you for the pleasure of taking the first song on this album. It is Dead and Bloated. Well, it's a very repetitive song. I've read some criticism of why it was chosen to kick off the album. Does it send the right signal? It's just got this very, very memorable couple of lines there. I am smelling like a rose that somebody gave me on my birthday deathbed. And that might be the most memorable actual lyric of this album. The music and the guitars and just the way that everything plays together creates a vibe that makes the lyrics not as important. But in this song, it is very, very much a Scott Weiland-driven vocal performance. I don't know how I became introduced to this song. I don't know if it was played on the radio because it was not released as a single, but I do remember at the age of 12 or 13, like singing it to myself in the shower. This is one that just pops into your head and you just wind up singing this to yourself. Altogether, Dead and Bloated is not the best song on the album, probably not the worst, but it is memorable to me from being introduced to it at a very young age.
I keep messing up his last name pronunciation, so I got a video of her how to pronounce it. I think it is Weiland.
Pronouncenames.com.
Scott Weiland?
It is Weiland. Because you did it, and I've always said it wrong.
I thought maybe we'd just have a discussion about it. How are we going to say this guy's name? We'll just stick to it, right?
Well, because I am English, and I admit that I think that the EI, I don't know why I would think, like, yeah, if you weigh something, right?
Weigh, yeah.
Yes, that's EI. So that's the A sound. So I've always said his name, Scott Weiland, but it is Weiland. Okay. My apologies to everyone. Okay, here we go. So Dead and Bloated, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's that memorable moment. We're going to play it.
I am smelling like the roses somebody gave me on my birthday deathbed. I am smelling like the roses somebody gave me 'cause I'm dead and blue. I am smelling like the roses somebody gave me on my birthday deathbed. I am smelling like the roses somebody gave me 'cause I'm dead and bloated.
So there's that very unique beginning, going through a bullhorn, yelling the lyrics, and then the drum kicks in, and then the bullhorn goes away, but the lyric or the singing is still kind of subdued. And then on the third time, it comes in full audio version of Scott's voice. We're now hearing his voice for the first time with the band. But this song is deceiving because it doesn't represent, in some ways, the driving force of this album is it is a kind of a slower tempo song. It doesn't really pick up at all from this point. It keeps the same drudge, sludge, grunge, all the things that Stone Temple Pilots has been thrown into the category of of grunge. Yeah, this song would be grunge. I think this would constitute a grunge song. This is an Alice in Chains meets Soundgarden type song.
This is one of the interesting things that Scott Weiland does on this album. I'm not sure if he was the first, but the whole megaphone, bullhorn type of thing. Prior to this, had you known any rock artists to use this approach?
Mike Patton.
So he was doing it before Scott Weiland.
Yeah, he was a megaphone guy. Megaphone stuff.
I've certainly heard it since in going through some of the artists that Stone Temple Pilots have been compared to. I noticed that on the album that Soundgarden put out after this, they utilized on Spoonman. Actually.
Oh, right. That's right.
And you hear that in the background, the bullhorn. So everybody admits that he uses the bullhorn on this album. But what I had heard was that on Dead and Bloated, it's actually him yelling into guitar pickups. I do know rock and roll artists like John Foreman from Switchfoot or other bands where they do that to make a different vocal sound, I suppose, would be yelling into the guitar pickups. And that is what I heard about this song and how he got that sound.
This is a great opener because in many ways, because it is memorable. I think everyone, when they hear those first two lines, everyone's like, oh, here we go. It's an oddly very simple effect, clever enough and simple enough that it's memorable and everyone knows what's about to happen, and the drums kick in and the song continues. I'm going to show a little bit of the chorus here just so people get an idea of it. So yeah, very heavy guitar work there too. Like that's sludge and very heavy. That's heavy guitar work going on there.
I think that you handled the analysis of the guitars a lot better than I do. I definitely have a stronger connection to the lyrics usually, but I think that you're right. The guitars, when they kick in, the Leo brothers, Dean and his brother Robert, they really do shine on many of these tracks. A nice relationship with Scott and his vocals.
A little bit slower song in the sense of pace. If you're listening to this album for the first time, you're like, okay, I get what these guys are doing. Then their second track on the album, one of their more controversial tracks on the album, and their first single. Every time I forget that this was their first single, I'm reminded, and then I'm always amazed that they would drop this as their first single. Not, well, because of the lyrical content, and people didn't know who these guys were. They wouldn't know that these guys are what their message is or who they are, or at least the average person. They had a fan base before this album came out, of course, but they did some songs under the moniker Mighty Joe Young, and they had a fan base in the local area. But Sex Type Thing, if you read the lyrics cold and straight, it's basically a song about taking advantage of women in aggressive sexual assaulting type ways. If you just read the lyrics, and if you're just like, yeah, if I was to give you the lyrics cold and say, hey, here's the song that we want to release as a single, you'd be like, oh, I don't know if we should do this. It is written through the eyes of a alpha type aggressive male, absolutely. And Scott Weiland, that was the whole point. They are pro-feminist, they are anti-sexual assault, but they're just saying, here is what somebody who is inappropriate or aggressive or sexually inappropriate with women, this is what they think.
Rock and roll and just music of all genres has a long history of writing a song from a viewpoint that is not your own. You can do it in a way that is mocking that point of view. You can do it in a way that shines a spotlight on the wrongness of that point of view. Stone Temple Pilots is not the first and not the last band to do a song that has controversial lyrics if you just take them at face value. Musicians insist that you dig a little deeper and try to understand what it is that, what sort of a statement they're trying to make by their decision of telling a story from this standpoint. That we would be lacking of a certain sort of artistry if musicians didn't challenge us in this way. It's just a very basic response to say, because he wrote this song and because it has this lyrics, then that must be what he thinks. I don't think there's anything about Scott Weiland as a person that we've seen throughout the years that would indicate that he actually believes these things. What he was able to do is he was able to put himself in those shoes and say these things and act in these ways that indicated that he understood what was wrong, what he calls macho type of attitude and this abusive, power-hungry attitude. This song was very popular, as you said. It reached number 23 on the rock chart.
Yeah, here we go. A little bit of lyrics. I'll just read it a little bit here. I am. I said I want to get next to you. I said I want to get close to you. You wouldn't want me to have to hurt you too. There's
controversial if you just took it on the page, right?
And then another part is, I am a man. I'll give you something that you won't forget. I said you shouldn't have worn that dress.
Now, isn't that the most indicative that he is making fun of this?
There are people who have argued against the victims of sexual assault and rape who you've heard the term, they were asking for it because of the way they happened to dress or dance at the club, or they had too many drinks. I mean, we know that the victim, there's been victim blaming for ages.
There's been victim blaming for so long that we know that those sorts of statements are just absolutely wrong as soon as they start to come out of your mouth.
But it's ridiculous that anyone's ever said that. I maybe it's just the way I'm wired. I can't imagine ever saying, oh, because she showed cleavage, I can thus do things to her. That's a weird segue, but I guess people have made that connection. Though these lyrics are dark, they are taken from the idea of a man who thinks this way. This song is such a killer song. It's amazing. This part of the song here, I really like how he sings this. Again, one of the more controversial lyrics that I read already in the song, but the way he vocals this song is starting to show a little bit of difference of his range as a vocalist, and it's even shown more in their sophomore album, how high he can sing and the different levels of singing that Scott Weiland has that he doesn't really show on this album. He shows more range in further albums. I love this song. This is such a balls to the wall. It's a rocker. There's no grunge here whatsoever. It's just a rock song.
It's a very aggressive. It's a very makes you want to, it makes you want to get up and move around. But I also think it would be a great just like driving song. It'd be great for like a race car video game or something. It's just got this, the wheels are in motion and it's grinding. I like what you said about his vocal range. These Stone Temple Pilots songs are so fun to sing. They're just fun to get down into the gutter where he is sometimes with his voice, the things that he can do with it. Very, very fun. I wanted to point out one thing about the imagery of this music video, because I thought it was just so on point with this whole genre and this whole scene at the time. In this music video, the band is playing in like some sort of an abandoned, partially collapsed building. There is a girl who is almost done up like a Disney princess. It's a blue dress and she's got a tiara on. Throughout the course of the video, Scott Weiland is sort of swinging around on a wrecking ball. There's another, I believe it might be the drummer, Eric Kretz, who is the antagonist in the video, sort of chasing down this woman who through the course of the video undresses herself and then dances around in the shadows. It's a very shadowy video. I sometimes wonder why they made these things so dark back in the early 90s. We didn't have HD video. Why would you make a music video where you can hardly see the band? But that was what they did at this time. Very, very memorable imagery in this video for sex type thing.
All right, you ready for track 3?
Wicked Garden. This was not a single released from this album, but it was given to radios as a radio promo. In my research for this album, I think I started to understand a little bit more about why I heard these songs as often as I did, the mechanics of releasing things to radio, whereas just the stations that I just got lucky that the stations that I was around at the time were playing these songs in such heavy rotation. This is about a 4-minute song. According to Scott Weiland, it's a song about the loss of purity, which I think is just such a lofty motif for a song. Wicked Garden, I think, is a pretty obvious reference to the Garden of Eden and Fall of Mankind and the original sin. You can also look at the title of the album, Core. Many times the band members have referenced that. Core of an apple, the original sin from the snake, this and that. So there are some religious references made in this album and in the title as well. One of my favorite versions of this song was the one they played on MTV Unplugged. I don't know if you were a fan of that show, but that was another way that I was originally introduced to this band. I was sometimes, in terms of parental determinations, I think I was sometimes more able to watch the acoustic versions of these songs than to actually watch the music videos, because the music videos just had all this imagery. This one in particular had a pretty memorable music video too. It was a concert video. Scott has pink hair in this video, and it was it's a concert video that featured a lot of mosh pitting in the crowd, mosh in the hallway. So this was a concert video, but another strong imagery for me at the time, and I think it matched up with the general grunge scene.
Like
I always hate stopping songs when I do these music episodes because I just want to keep listening to the song. I hate interrupting it, but for the purpose of the podcast, we can't play the whole thing and what have you. But this is another great song. It's kind of gone back a little bit to the sound of Dead and Bloated, that same type of pace, lower vocal. It never quite kicks up again. So we go Dead and Bloated, Hard Drive and Sex type thing. Now we've kind of reverted again back to a little bit of that slower moving, not as fun type sound.
Still one of the band's biggest hits, and despite not being released as a single, it got to number 11 on the U.S. Rock Tracks chart. Got some play, sure did.
It's a fan favorite, and it's big at concerts. I think they probably play it every show. All right, so now we're rolling into their instrumental, No Memory. So Wicked Garden's lyrics deal with the loss of innocence and purity, while Sin addresses, which is the track after this one, violent and ugly relationships. So the song No Memory, it's a musical interlude between Wicked Garden and Sin, and it was written by guitarist Dean DeLeo. I'll play a little snippet of it. You get the idea of it. This will not be in the running for worst song on the album because Scott does not sing on it. So all the band members do not participate on this track. Here we go. Definitely hear the bass and guitar, but there's no drums or vocals. And it's a nice little interlude.
I don't hate it.
No.
I don't even have the criticism that I've heard a lot is that it served no purpose or it's a waste of a minute. I think this album is only 53 minutes long. I don't think that it's wasting any of our time. And it honestly sounds like it would fit right in. It sounds to me almost like a Metallica intro of some sort. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just there.
It's just there. Yeah, if you're playing this on a cassette, you're not fast forwarding it. If you're playing it on a CD all the way through, you're not skipping it. It does kind of bleed into your song. So if you want to just roll right into number 5.
Absolutely. Number 5 is the song called Sin. This is a song that is inspired by a Canadian rock band by the name of Rush. Had you heard that?
I think I've heard of that band, Rush. They had a couple songs I think they've done. I think a couple of people might have heard of these guys. I don't think they're really that big. They're only Canadian, so I don't think anyone outside of Canada has heard of Rush. So,
well, they're no Bare Naked Ladies. That's what I would say.
Or Nickelback.
Or they're no Nickelback.
They're no Nickelback.
Don't hold.
Oh man, they're gonna. Oh, the hate mail will come in now, boy.
Nickelback over Rush. The Sin, the 5th song on this album, is not a single, was never even released as a radio single, which is that this is one of the songs that the band loves to play live. It's got a great building atmosphere to it. There's a couple of guitar solos. There's a bridge that's a nice acoustic kind of in the middle there. There's a solo at the end where I just wrote in my notes, it sounds like the guitar is kind of talking to you. So I think that's a cool thing about some of these rock songs, especially from this era. They were not afraid to sort of have a little jam here. You want to play a little bit of Sin?
All right, we'll do the intro for a few seconds, and then I'll go to the part that you earmarked right after.
Sure.
So right there, right away, you get that driving guitar rhythm. That's, again, a rock rhythm.
Really, really love it. This is a 6-minute song with you throw in the addition of the intro, No Memory. It's a nice 7-minute jam. Never sounds too long to me. It progresses in all the right ways.
Well, I love this part here.
I did too.
This is very unique to have this change up. And he's trying to get a sense of Scott Weiland's vocal range. very rock sounding here.
Oh, I love it.
I keep bringing this up only because I don't think Stone Temple Pilots is a grunge band. I just don't.
Just got improperly put into this category. I think it happens all the time when you're sort of in the midst of changing different genres of rock. The early 90s was such an interesting time.
Tumultuous time between the hair metal days and the grunge days. So I think Stone Temple Pilots, like you said very well already, that they bridged that gap where you could be a grunge fan and safely like these guys, and you were a hair metal fan and you could safely like these guys without betraying what you thought should be the better of the two genres.
And then you get into some of the showmanship of those late 90s alt rock bands, and they were inspired by this as well. And Stone Temple Pilots, not on this album, but in their future albums, they changed their style accordingly.
All right, track 6 is Naked Sunday. This is taking a stab at religion and problems with religion. And I should note that Scott Weiland and most of the band, they're in their mid-20s right now. Scott is 25. I'm always amazed at the ages. 25, he's writing and singing this stuff, and when you know their age, especially when it comes to religion, this is kind of the age where people start questioning, I was one way growing up or whatever, the world told me this, or whatever it might be. And when you get into your 20s, you start to identify yourself and see, who am I outside of my home? Who am I on my own? This song kind of reflects the religious aspect of that, but it's kind of pointing the finger at the evangelicals, which isn't uncommon, or even, I would dare say, it might be even a little cliche, but evangelicals have really made a real mess of religion, I think. Haven't they? Because
isn't that a way of saying that religious people have ruined religion?
Yes, I was just going to say, religion is fine and dandy if humans just stayed out of it. Yeah,
exactly. I'm latching on to what you said about the age of 25, the way that Scott and other rock stars, when they get to that age, you have a tendency to get out over your skis a little bit. You've gotten to the point where you're no longer a child. You look back on things that you thought when you were 18 or even 20, and you say, how could I possibly thought those things? I was such a fool. Well, guess what? At 25, you're still a fool about certain things as well. You have this, maybe it's an undeserved confidence in your understanding. And so you wind up writing these songs and you laugh at the people that are such sheep and such fools. Well, then you get to the age of 30 and you realize that you were sort of an idiot at 25 as well.
Oh, I was a man. I wish I could go back to my 20-something-year-old self and say, snap out of it, you pompous ass.
Sure, because you're so full of not being a kid, but you're also you're not as wise as you think that you might be.
You're not at all. You're not, and every 20-year-old thinks they have it all figured out. Yeah, of course.
That's right. Naked Sunday wasn't just a stab at religion. Isn't it also something of like a funk track? They were trying some things here.
Yeah, it's great. Here we go. Let's check it out. I love this intro. And his vocal work here, the effect that he uses is fun. It's like you can almost picture him on the top of a podium in front of a congregation.
I gotta tell you, intro reminds me of Tattoo of the Sun.
Oh, sorry, say that again?
This intro just always reminds me of Tattoo of the Sun by Third Eye Blind. Another failed attempt to do a funk song by a rock band.
Fair enough. How fast that bass is playing.
Yeah.
No, so I love Scott's, his, it's hard to sing in general. I can't sing a note if my life depended on it.
I think it's really fun to sing. I think this is another one of his megaphone bullhorn songs.
Yeah.
They actually played this on Saturday Night Live when they did their first appearance. I can't believe that they have these great singles, and I think they did either Creep or Plush, but then they also did Naked Sunday. Just
good for them.
Shocked decision. Well, yeah, absolutely.
I must have known that because I was a huge fan at the time, and I was a huge Saturday Night Live watcher at the time, so I'm sure I saw the performance 28 years. Can you believe this album? We didn't mention this. It came out almost 3 decades ago.
It did. They did their 25th re-release, and that was 3 years ago.
It's insane. So, this is insane to me. I just can't believe this album is almost 30 years. Where is the time going? Okay. I love this effect here. This is him kind of like yelling at the congregation. Oh, maybe not this part. Okay, where did I find it? Oh, this is the solo part I want to show. That's such a fun part, the solo, and then he yells at the congregation, and then he goes back to his. It's a great effect. It's such a fun song. Now, you said it was a failed attempt, like Third Eye Blind's attempt. I think they knocked this funk out of the park.
Fair enough. We can agree to disagree on that one. Perhaps I'm not as well versed in funk or.
Oh, I don't know anything about. Well, I mean, if you listen to early Red Hot Chili Peppers, they've done it well. To me, that song is so much fun. I really enjoy that song. But hopefully we haven't got a hint of what your worst pick might be. I hope I haven't buried the lead on that by challenging you. But we'll continue. Okay, you got the next one.
Well, we will have to talk at the end about what songs are considered and what songs are not.
That's right. Absolutely.
What I wanted to point out about Naked Sunday is one of two songs on this album that credits each member of the band with some writing.
Oh, there you go.
So each member of the band had some part to do with this song. The other song where everyone gets a credit is Plush. Obviously, this song was, meaningful to all of them. They do sound like they're having fun on the track,
right?
But that's not always indicative of a good track. The next song on the album is number 7. It's a little ditty called Creep. It was the 4th single released off the album. It was released in November of 1993, over a full year after the album was released. That kind of struck me as a very old school way of doing it. I don't know if these days you pump out the album, you drop a couple singles. I don't know if you're really still releasing singles off that album a year later. That's just not how it's done these days. But This is certainly showing the longevity of this album. I can remember listening to these songs on the radio in 97, 98, into the late 90s, and Creep was still very, very heavy rotation. The album version of this song is 5.5 minutes. The radio edit is 4.5. It always did seem like a very somber song. It seems like it's longer than it is. This is one of the first songs that you might think this is a Nirvana song. This is very heavily inspired. It's a song about letting yourself down. It's a song about not feeling like you fit in or second guessing yourself.
Yesterday makes me want to stay.
This song has such a strong vibe for me.
Take time with a wounded hand, 'cause it likes to heal. Take time with a wounded hand, 'cause I like to steal. Take time with a wounded hand, 'cause it likes to heal. I like to steal. I'm half the man I used to be. Well, I'm half the man I used to be. Well, I'm half the man
I remember the song very well. Obviously, I remember this album. I listened to it on heavy rotation personally as a teenager, and I get why this is a single. I understand why this is a single. I know how singles work.
Well, it was the last single that was released in November. They released their sophomore album the following June.
It's crazy.
So,
yeah.
And the video for this one was black and white. Everyone was wearing flannel, sitting around a kitchen table. And then they did what I think was a very, very, very common piece of imagery from the 90s. Scott Weiland sitting on the floor of a black and white checkerboard, like linoleum floor, and he's hugging his knees. Very sad boy rock star look. They did have a second video that they made for this one, directed by Gus Van Sant. And you and I have had a podcast previously where we talked about a movie made by Gus Van Sant. Do you remember which one?
Yeah, Good Will Hunting, I believe, right?
Good Will Hunting. Yeah. So I always knew that he came from the world of music videos. Did not know that he had directed a Stone Temple Pilots video. And in fact, that Stone Temple Pilots video for this song was never released because of its drug and sexual references. Mr. Van Sant was certainly on one when he directed this video, and it never got released. This song made it to number 2 on the Billboard charts.
Not surprised. It's one that the guy in the car driving his car can listen to, and his girlfriend doesn't mind as well.
That's absolutely right.
And then he puts on a sex type thing, and oh boy.
Well, I think the next song was for you, sir.
Piece of pie. Well, we just had American Thanksgiving. Did you have any pie there, my friend?
I had some pecan pie.
Ooh.
I had some pumpkin pie. Yes. What about you?
I'm a Canadian, and we had Canadian Thanksgiving in October, but we actually have 3 American-born children, so we often celebrate or recognize American Thanksgiving when it does happen, because we were stationed in the States for 4 years and had 3 children while we were there. We love the U.S. We love our southern neighbors. Because I'm on a low-carb, no-sugar diet, unfortunately, I did not enjoy any pie.
It was a pieless year for you. I don't understand Canadian Thanksgiving. Why is it 1 month earlier?
To make sure I don't sound like an idiot, I'll just say Google it.
Are there pilgrims involved?
There's pilgrims, there's Aboriginal people involved. It's all that good stuff. Everyone just got along. We all shared a meal together, just like you guys, just like the Native Americans and Aboriginals in Canada, First Nations people. We all just got along. The white man and the first settlers of these great nations, we all got along, right? Isn't that what history says? We shared turkey and mashed potatoes.
I think it started off with kumbaya, and nothing bad ever happened after that.
No, that's my understanding. I believe that's called whitewash history. I could be wrong. All right, so this song is called Piece of Pie. I freaking love this song.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I got a feeling I haven't said enough of how much I like certain songs that come up, and because I don't want to bury the lead on my worst pick. It's fair to say when we love a song, and I love this album generally. 80% of this album I just love. I just love his vocals on this. I love the effect, the change, the back, and just the way I almost see him singing the song out of the side of his mouth. I don't know why. He's like, I just love the way he does the vocal in this song.
There's that one part where he goes, yeah. You can't even say it with your mouth wide open. You've got to have
I've always just pictured him. He's like, hey, like an old timey, gangster from the 30s or 40s. Yeah. Yeah, great stuff. Boy, I don't want to stop it, but
I really enjoyed it. The origin of the title. This song, in addition to the song Sin, the fifth song, both of those were composites of other songs that they had put together. Piece of Pie with all of the different solos. Originally, those solos were all contained in different songs. And so specifically Piece of Pie is a reference to the fact that this is sort of different pieces of different pies put together to make one song, sort of the way that you would put your leftover pecan pie with your leftover pumpkin pie and eat those later.
I could eat those together easily. I'm
absolutely.
starving. Now I'm starving. I think we've done a few podcast recordings where I'm starving.
Next song on the album is probably objectively the most successful song on this album. It is the only single. It was the third single, but it's the only single that got to number one on the Billboard album chart. It was released in May 13th of 1993. It is about 5 minutes long on the album, about 4 minutes on the radio. It is a song called Plush.
And I feel the time's a ways to go. So where you go into tomorrow, and I see that these are lies to come. So would you even care? And I feel it. And I feel it. Where you going for tomorrow?
This song was so huge. It won the 1994 Grammy for a hard rock performance. It beat out such songs as AC/DC's Highway to Hell and the Smashing Pumpkins' Cherub Rock. It won MTV Music Video Awards. It was part of the reason why they got the 1993 award for MTV's Best New Artist. It also was a little bit controversial in the same way as some of the other songs. David Spade made a joke about this song. He said on Saturday Night Live, "I remember the first time I heard this song when it was Pearl Jam."
Yeah.
Very, very popular song. Very, very iconic music video as well. Scott had red hair. They were doing the
I remember
fish
that.
eye lens type of thing as they were filming it. Very iconic for that time in music. It's got one of the most iconic rock hooks ever about dogs finding her. It took me a long time to really understand. Is this what I'm hearing? Is this really what I'm hearing? Scott said that he wrote this song after he read a newspaper article about a girl who had been found dead after being kidnapped in the early 90s. Now, I don't know if you hear that a lot these days. Multi-platinum artists that write songs about dead girls in newspaper articles. Scott Weiland found his inspiration in that way. This is just one of the hugest songs on radio ever. In the decade of 2010 through 2019, it was the number 4 most played song on rock radio. And that was 20 years after its release.
Yeah, some songs do that, so they have that longevity.
Sure.
It does represent the longevity of the song. It does sound like it came from the 90s, but it's a song that's okay, that I can see why satellite radio or whatever the station is would play the song safely, knowing that most people in the vehicle or working at work are not going to mind listening to this song. And so to hear that it's played as much as it was throughout the 2010 to 2019, not surprising at all. Funny, my best friend growing up, and shout out to Nathan there if he's listening to this episode. I remember he told me, he goes, because I was already a big Pearl Jam fan. I had their, of course, I had their album 10, and he goes, "Oh, Ryan, there's a new Pearl Jam song," and he was, because this is before YouTube, this was just what you heard on the radio. I guess he had heard it on the radio or something. And I'm like, well, new Pearl Jams? I don't think there is a new song or whatever. And I forget how he got me to it, but when I heard it, I was like, oh, Nathan, this is not Pearl Jam. This is Stone Temple Pilots, and I don't fault him for it now. This is where the comparison is inevitable at this time with this song. You could almost slip in Eddie Vedder singing here.
It's not a bad thing. It certainly
No.
is not. The bands that I fell in love with when I was sort of coming of age, but here from a couple of years earlier, I probably did not know that this was a Stone Temple Pilots song or a Pearl Jam song for several years. I just knew it was a good song. And so that's sort of my introduction to it. That and the music video. MTV had a show called Headbangers Ball, and Scott Weiland and Dean DeLeo appeared on the show. I mistakenly called him Dan DeLeo earlier. It's Dean. They came on the show and gave an acoustic performance of Plush. The acoustic performance of Plush also got very, very, very heavy airplay in my area. I'd be listening to the radio on 2 separate days, and they would play this song, one version or the other. I like both. I like a lot of the acoustic versions of these songs.
Have you ever wet your bed?
Not something that I'm here to talk about on this particular podcast.
Understood. Well, the next track is called Wet My Bed. It officially is a song. It's more of a spoken word piece, but every band member, as far as I can tell, participates in this track. So it does fall into the category of it can be, if so desired, picked as the worst track on the album. But it's called Wet My Bed. It's only 1 minute 36 seconds long.
And lots of fluffy pillows, now soiled. And where's my cigarette? Did you check the bathroom? The bathtub? She sleeps there sometimes. Water cleanses, you know. Washes dirt away, makes new. Maybe she swam away.
Okay. All right. Now what?
This song here was actually their first recorded track for the album. It's 96 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
It emerged from an improv session between the vocalist Scott and, of course, the bassist Robert, who were alone in the studio. And then producer Brendan O'Brien, which you forgot to mention. Brendan O'Brien, a very incredible producer. He has produced some of the biggest albums in rock and pop and whatever history. He's an incredibly talented producer. That's his voice at the end of the track that could be heard. All right, now what? So the rest of the album, should be noted, after this track was recorded in a matter of 5 weeks. But this was their officially first recorded track for the album, Wet My Bed. Of course, that funny spoken word by Scott. It sounds like each member is in this. I hear a bit of bass, I hear some guitar strumming, I hear a little bit of drum. We even have the producer chiming in, so really this is a full team effort. But what I do like about this is when the producer, Brendan, comes in and says, okay, what next? I'm just going to go back a little bit, because it bleeds right into your... It's a great segue, because the producer actually says, hey, what's next? And then we get into your track, Cracker Man. I'm just going to play that segue, because I think it's important to hear it as it plays on the album.
Okay. All right. Now what?
Now what?
Cracker Man is another non-single but very, very energetic and memorable song. It was the first song they played when they did MTV Unplugged in 1993. Their version that they did was absolutely phenomenal. It's another bullhorn megaphone song. There's some controversy about whether or not it's written about a homeless person, or I don't remember what the other option was. I think it probably does sound like it was written by a homeless person. I really do like the back and forth Scott talking to himself, both regular voice and then bullhorn megaphone Scott. Absolutely fantastic guitars. It hits me in the right way because of the "and I think too much" kind of lyrics. Songs written by complicated rock stars about the activity that goes on in their own head, their anxieties or their more internal thoughts, always appeal to me. You understand maybe a little bit more about Scott and maybe why he died of a drug overdose in 2015. These lyrics are very personal to him.
Rubber band,
What a great opening. Well, the whole song just drives the whole way. This is a great song. I think it's a favorite right away for a lot of people when they hear it on the album. It's could have easily been a single. You could almost make the argument this could have been replaced in a less controversial way. They could have made Cracker Man their first single over Sex Type Thing. It's a less controversial song, and it would have done the same driving sound that Sex Type Thing brings. If I was a record company or producer, maybe at the time, if I would have been tentative about releasing Sex Type Thing as a single, this might have been a safer bet, but also would have still shown you the driving sound this album has.
I totally agree. I also just wanted to point out the length of the song. It never lets up, and it goes pretty hard for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
It's the shortest song on the album, with the exception of the instrumental and the spoken word, I suppose. Mm-hmm. It's just like no second was wasted. It's just powering through the entire way. Actually has some pretty memorable lyrics for me.
And speaking of length of songs, their closer wasn't common a lot for these bands, like these grunge bands and or even rock bands that were not to say straightforward, but we're not talking about Pink Floyd here. We're not talking about Led Zeppelin here or Rush. We mentioned that band Rush that nobody knows who they are, but they had some longer songs too. But this song here, their last one on the album, Where the River Goes, it clocks in at 8.5 minutes. Where the River Goes, it's almost 3 minutes longer than Dead and Bloated, but it feels shorter.
Interesting. Well, Dead and Bloated is so repetitive.
That's the biggest hit on that one.
I think Where the River Goes, if it's not fitting in style with the grunge or the hair bands that preceded it, it is fitting in style with the alternative rock albums that followed it. A lot of alternative rock bands in the mid and late 90s put a long jam session type of song at the end of their album. It happened all the time. This fits in very well with those sorts of albums.
Great drum sound there. I like that it has a guitar solo right at the beginning, kind of like
I don't waste any time.
And then I'm going to go to where it picks up a little bit, and the tempo does pick up a little bit here in the song, like as far as the beat and the progression. This is the 4-minute mark, halfway through.
Yeah. There's a great one at 5:30 is what I had written down. Yeah, I think you're getting it right there.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what I got. So that is the closer. Like we said, 8.5 minutes long, and it does suffer a little bit at the end with the repetitive chorus, but it's a song that has so many changes, comparatively speaking to the other songs of the album, that it's unique. It has a great guitar solo. I like the chorus a lot. I like the message of the song. Yeah, so there you go. Where the River Goes is the album closer to 1992's Core.
I have a feeling that song is likely a big hit live. Stone Temple Pilots are one of the few bands that I really do have an affinity for that I've never seen live. Want to talk about the things that are very impactful at a concert. I know it's almost the end of 2020. What the heck is a concert, right?
Yeah,
but,
remember those? Boy.
Yeah, really. There's certain songs that are big hits at concerts, and I would imagine this is a good one. And they probably do a fair amount of improvisation, really just have a good time as the band on that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen them live either. Well, with Scott Weiland, I did see them with their new singer, Jeff Gutt.
Oh, okay.
And he's great. He's great. It's through no fault of his own that Scott's dead. And I like that the band has continued to make music, because at the end of the day, it's really the DeLille band. They do all the music writing for the majority of that is their sound. That is their music sound. It's kind of like Van Halen has had 2 different singers, or even 3 if you count Gary Cherone. But it was Eddie Van Halen, may he rest in peace, as well, that drove the music. And sometimes the music will change for the singer and the way they sing. So I saw them live. So I think it was 2018. I saw Stone Temple Pilots live. So I did see the brothers live with Jeff singing. He did a great, phenomenal job. Just that fine line between sounding like Scott when you need to sound like Scott, but sound like him for his songs. Great live music. They were touring with Bush and The Cult. So it was a great triple bill. And it's weird because I was a huge concert goer back in the day. I still am when I can, not anymore, but back when I was a teenager, I saw tons and tons and tons of shows back in the heyday of all these bands. For whatever reason, I just missed seeing Stone Temple Pilots until, unfortunately, after Scott's passing. So we might have to hash this out a little bit. Why don't you give me... Do you have 3 that could be in the running, or just 2, without revealing your answer?
3 in the running for worst. That's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
3, and we're not including No Memory.
No Memory is out of the running. It cannot be included.
But Wet My Bed is in the running.
Correct. Everyone participates in it. It's enough of a song that there's a progression, there's a beat, there's a drum playing. It's not just noise, if that makes sense. It is spoken word, but it's a track, and I think it's officially a song. It's the first recorded track of the album. So
3 that I'm giving in the contention for worst: Wet My Bed, Naked Sunday, Piece of Pie.
Okay. Wow. Holy Hannah. We have 2 different experiences with this album.
And you and I have differed on this before. Sometimes we have other people here to sort of indicate who's right and who's wrong.
Well, of course I'm right, but continue.
Well, I just want to make it clear, you are allergic to a single. You always have been, you always will be. Some of these songs that are a little messier than others don't appeal to me.
You know me well, but I want to hear your reasons for... I already know your reason for Wet My Bed, and I dare say I could probably put money on your pick here, but tell me your reasons for Piece of Pie and Naked Sunday. Well, you mentioned you thought they failed at that song with the funk sound.
Like I said, maybe funk doesn't appeal to my ears, but then
Fair.
Funk by a band that doesn't do funk, it sounds messy to me.
Okay.
It's the lyrics to that song, his ideas on religion, I really don't care. I really don't. This whole bully pulpit, looking down on the sheep that believe in religion, that song has been done, and I guarantee you it's been done better. Piece of Pie has some really, really great guitars in it, but I think as soon as I found out that it wasn't originally a song, it was a pieces of other songs put together, I said, okay, they needed to fill out some time and they wanted to put a certain kind of song here. What I did note about this album was that the Stone Temple Pilots were trying to put together an album. They were trying to, place the singles in certain places.
Yeah, they did.
Release the singles in certain places. This was an album experience. And so here I think they needed something to go between Creep and Plush, and this is what they came up with. It's not a bad song, but this is a very, very good album. And that is my, probably third. You made me give 3. So
not everything's created equal. I hate it when people say you can't pick a worst, because that would mean you like every song the same, which would be a boring existence. I don't know how you could like how could you like everything the same? Whatever that level is, you can't experience everything the same. It's weird. Which one is your worst pick there, my friend?
My worst pick is Wet My Bed.
Okay.
If you put it in the category of song.
That's fair. And I would assume if we hadn't, you would just say Naked Sunday.
Yeah, I would say Naked Sunday. Yep.
Okay, so do you want to take a guess what my bottom 3 songs are?
I would say 3 of the singles. Probably Creep, Plush, and Dead and Bloated, or Wicked Garden.
Boy, you know me too. What? Yeah.
I knew you from the time we agreed to do this.
Yes, so my bottom 3 songs. Now, is it because they're singles? I do have a bit of single-itis. I don't know why it is. I understand the nature of the single. I both understand it, but despise singles. I hate that I'm told by the companies which songs will be the most pleasing to my ear upon first listen, because that's basically what they're saying. They're saying, hey, here's an album that has different sounds, different concepts. We get it from funk to spoken word to 8-minute songs to whatever it might be. But to get you into those songs, we have to kind of throw the singles at people that will be across the board, everyone might like the most, and then they'll come in and hear the deeper tracks. With this album core, I will say right now before I get into my worst pick, it is the non-singles that drive this album.
Says you.
Oh my goodness. Cracker Man, Naked Sunday, Sin, Sex Type Thing notwithstanding. That is the one single. I'm always surprised it's a single because of his content, but not surprised because of his musical. I love a drive and rock song. We call Wicked Garden, it's not a single, it's a radio promo, but it's almost a single. But yeah, so Wicked Garden, Plush, and Creep. Those are my 3 bottom songs. I'm not even joking.
8 million Stone Temple Pilot fans can't be wrong, Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm telling you, Piece of Pie, Naked Sunday, Cracker Man, Where the River Goes. Wicked Garden's got a driving guitar, driving rhythm enough that no, it's not my worst pick. So now we're down to Creep and Plush.
How are you choosing between Creep and Plush?
Easily. Apologize to anyone that's offended by this. That's a Stone Temple Pilots fan. Here we go. So the reason why I'm going to pick this one is because it's boring, and that's Creep. The vocal work is great. Like Scott sings it very well. The drum work is really nice, but it's just so boring. It's 5.5 minutes. It's just Plush just beats it enough because it's just a little bit faster and a little bit crunchier. But Creep is so boring. I'm sorry, they're boring songs to me. Maybe it's single-itis. Maybe if I heard this album for the first time, I might have something different to say about it, but it's just, this is the first time I've listened to Creep in probably on my own volition, without it being played beyond my control in probably 25 years.
You don't have to seek these songs out. You don't. They're on the radio. They're in supermarkets. They're in video games. They're not really in like TV commercials, but give it time. These songs are ubiquitous. These songs are in the ether, in the public consciousness, and they have been for 27, 28 years.
It's just that because it doesn't represent the band very well either. In fact, it cheapens them a little bit because of the unfair comparisons to other bands. If I was to show, hey, I wanted to show you this band called Stone Temple Pilots, I wouldn't lead with this song. Despite its chart-topping success and its radio play, I wouldn't, because I'm like, this isn't the band that we're going to even hear later on in their career. This song is, I almost feel like it was made to be on the radio.
I would agree with you. It sounds more like a Nirvana song than a Stone Temple Pilots song. It almost sounds like an emo song. The imagery being borrowed. It even includes the line, I think I'll start a fire. Not really one of the grunge anthems, really more of a sad rock star from later. I love it. It's not anything that I seek out, but it's something that I certainly get my fill of involuntarily. It's been that way my entire life. I don't find these singles to be bad songs at all. I find them to be very catchy and have some longevity to them.
I wonder if that has to do partly because of not our age difference, but in how we came across the album, like what it meant to me. Even as a teenager, I was anti-single. I stayed away from the radio. I would remember buying albums now and wanting to know what the singles were. I tried so hard to stay away from, even back then. It was hard, but I tried. I remember thinking, I don't want to know so-and-so's releasing their new single. I would actually avoid listening to it until I bought the CD.
I think you're absolutely right. It's indicative of a more mature approach to the music, and it's indicative of perhaps you know what you want, and like you said, you don't want anyone to tell you what you want. I have a lot of experience with my favorite bands. If I already know what I like about them, I usually disagree with the choice of the single from their next album. That's sort of across the board, absolutely. Yeah. But the way that I was introduced to this band and the MTV approach to it and the radio approach, I just have nothing against these big mega hits. 8-time platinum album, huge, award-winning, very, very indicative of the time that it came out, and still has legs.
I love it.
These deeper cuts are fantastic.
Oh, they're amazing. They're amazing. All right. Well, Drew, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope people will stick around for in a few weeks' time when Purple, Part 2 of the Stone Temple Pilots coverage will be done. The reason why we picked Purple as the best of Stone Temple Pilots, because this is the worst of the best, is because, not to say that their career declined a little bit afterwards, but it's just the nature of bands everywhere. There's a peak. Every band has a peak. Every band has a peak, no matter who they are, and then they just don't peak anymore, because that's what peaking is. It's an apex. It's a peak. And I think they peaked.
Can we agree the peak of Stone Temple Pilots was Interstate Love Song?
Okay, can we not spoil, please, part 2? Holy smokes. What are you trying to do here?
Is it a spoiler if I mention a song that's been out for 27 years?
All I'll say is that song is not their peak, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, so Purple. Great album. I freaking love that album. What a great sophomore effort. In fact, it was the album Purple, those little T's, that made me love the band just that much more. All right.
It's been a pleasure talking Stone Temple Pilots with you, Ryan.
And remember, in front of every silver lining, there's a cloud, and we're here to help you find that. Thanks, Drew. I hope to talk to you again.
We've already got it on the books.
Gator Productions.
All right, beautiful job, brother.
I'm